Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to today's Kyle Seraphin Show. It is Wednesday. It is October the 22nd. If you're wondering how many days the government has been shut down, just count the number of days so far in October. It's day 22 of our government not being open, and none of you noticed. Still, none of you care. I want to talk about it a little bit because it reminds me that there are things that our government does that is going to have a dramatic impact shortly on some people, and November may get spicy. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. I want to get into it more. I also want to talk about having some beef with Donald Trump. There's a couple of things out there that seem really problematic. Some of the bigger campaign pushes, and maybe the most overarching campaign push that Donald Trump made was that he would be putting America first. For most of us, if I told you that I was going to take care of you first, that would mean that by the time that I'm done and I'm willing to move on and help other things and people and such, you would be squared away. Your needs would be met. It doesn't seem like it would be that difficult to accomplish. Prioritizing things that are American. But it seems like the more I look at it, and the more that some of us are watching this week specifically, Donald Trump is not putting America first. He's doing some things that are favorable for America. No question about it. Shutting down the border, critical need. Definitely was well done. But some of the stuff is not well thought out. And when we start looking honestly about what was it that you voted for, how many of you voted for Diwali in the White House? Or Diwali, I guess it's pronounced. How many of you voted for our Argentinian cattle ranchers to be taken care of before American cattle ranchers? Because I didn't. But I also had a very transactional vote. I knew kind of what I was getting and what I was not getting. What I was hoping to get was that my friend Steve Baker, that my friends who are J6ers, my hope was that those people would not find themselves in jail. And that was it. So I got that. And I'm going to very, very honestly admit that I'm greedy too. Because in addition to having a transactional vote where I wanted folks that I know and I wanted to not go to prison, I also really did want Donald Trump to fulfill that promise that we would start looking like America was in fact taking care of America first. And so as much as I am frustrated with people on welfare and EBT and SNAP, and we're going to talk about some of those numbers because they're actually fairly staggering. How many people in this country are on some form of public assistance? I had no idea. And how many of them are here illegally? And that's really problematic too. We've got to be real serious about that. Isn't it also problematic that we throw money at other countries before we solve our own problem? Does it make any bit of sense to any normal American? Like, correct me if I'm wrong. I'd actually love to see your comments in the Spotify comments, in the YouTube comments, in the Rumble comments. Make posts over on X. Please comment on this. When your mind hears the words America first, does that sound to you like we are going to continue throwing money and products at other countries when Americans are struggling? The fact that we have people that are collecting and need to collect because of various individual circumstances of which we cannot all know of. Some of you in this audience have collected food stamps, EBT, have collected and have been beneficiaries of the SNAP programs. Some of you have had those things and worked your way off them. And I applaud you for that because I think that's probably a really difficult thing. One, it's very humbling to accept that kind of charity, especially like maybe it's less humbling from the government, but it is difficult, I think, to admit I can't support myself and I need to lean on a program, particularly if you have a relatively conservative mindset. That's difficult because it admits that you're not in control and you don't have that power. to work yourself off it is even better because most people get addicted to having comforts and mediocre ways of life. But did any of you expect that we'd be kicking people off EBT while still cutting checks to foreign governments to fund their wars, to give them military equipment, to buy the military equipment from U.S. companies? So we're scratching each other's backs within the country and then giving that information or giving those technologies away. Is that really what we were all about? It doesn't make sense to me that that's what America First would mean. And I have a bunch of data that I've got on my screen right now that we're going to walk through it about immigration, about who gets public assistance in this country. Some of the numbers are actually fairly staggering once you start doing it by percentage and you realize how much money you're spending. So we're going to talk about new tax brackets that are coming out for next year, assuming they actually have a government that works. We got a lot of things that I want to cover on this, and this may be more of a data-intensive show than an emotional show. Yesterday, I felt like yesterday's program was not as good as I hoped it would be because it was a lot of frustration that I have with values in this nation. And of course, inevitably, whenever I think a show is not done very well, I get some messages of people saying, I've never commented on one of your shows, but I thought it was your best show ever. And it's like, this is why you guys are so important. This is why the audience is so critical for being here. Apparently, we're having some issues with our restream as well. For whatever it's worth, folks, I want you guys to know I had failings yesterday. We lost somehow like 6.3% of the total frames that were sent over. And I don't know if that's an issue with, I don't know if it's an issue with what happened on the AWS server. I don't know where it came from or why it came like that or what the issue was. And of course, now I'm even seeing that we've got some issues with YouTube right now as we're speaking. I have adjusted a lot of the settings. So for those of you that are wondering like, hey, what the hell's going on? And how come I can't always find the thing where I want it? It's hard to say whether it's something on the tech end that happens between me and you, or whether there's some monkey in the middle that's playing a little bit of a shenanigans. All I do know is that these shows are all recorded. They're all really important that you guys are here because the audience, the live stream audience that we have is a big function, a big part of it. And I always upload a clean copy over to Spotify. And you can find the Spotify show. It's at kyleserafinshow.com. Very easy to remember. My name, show.com, kyleserafinshow.com. We stream it in multiple places. One place we actually always get it over to is Locals. Locals tends to have less issues than Rumble, even though they're on the same engine. They literally are on the same server systems. That's at kyleserafin.com, and you can support us there. Wherever you see us, hopefully the folks over on YouTube are seeing this now. Make sure you like the video. Make sure that you're sharing it. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel. We're reaching or closing in on 15,000 subscribers over on YouTube, which is great. It's slow, and I wish it was more, but that's it. Okay, so before we get deeper in the weeds, and I think that the YouTube thing is straightened out. It was listed as a hidden file initially, and now it's back on. I'm telling you all this because I just like to do the transparency game. Let's also talk about water before we do. This is one of our sponsors. Transparently, Cove Pure pays me, and I have one of their machines, so I can honestly talk about it. And one of the folks from the advertising agency who represents me to these companies and these companies back to me, told me that after listening to my spot, she also was going to go out there and consider a Cove Pure unit because she liked the idea of kids being able to access it. It's a countertop unit. And that comes down to the question of what have you got in your drinking water and how many of you have thought about it? Many of you probably have if you're survival minded. I was not one of those people previously. I actually didn't care until we moved to Texas and the water started coming out smelling like sulfur and yellow. So I've done about a 180 on that. If you guys want to check out this machine, it's covepure.com/KYLE. It's one of 2 water filtration units I have. It is by far the easiest and it's definitely the most kid friendly. It's countertop. It does not require any plumbing. It will filter out 99.9% of impurities and contaminants as a 4-stage filter, and it can get out things like pesticides and hormones and pharmaceuticals that are out there floating around in the water. There's all kinds of this wild stuff. Yes, these things have been problematic for various folks who have been paying attention. Alex Jones has famously covered it. If you got young kids and you don't want weird things going into their bodies, this is a great option. If you just are an aesthetics person, it's a really good-looking machine. It's very nice. It's easy to use. It's 15 minutes of setup. That's just a couple of buttons pushed. You walk away and let it filter and you come back and you pour out the bad water and do it again until you prime it. I like that part very much because I've also set up some of these gravity drip ones and they're a little bit harder. The fact that you can get different temperatures of water is really nice. You can get instant punch, get tea. It's actually got a lock feature on the tea in case you've got kids, so you don't get boiling water out on your little ones. They actually have to know how to hit the unlock button, which is not necessarily obvious to a child. There are better, there are better things than just pulling the tap out and hoping that you're not getting junk. And of course, there are cheaper water filters out there, Britas and so on and so forth. I think this gets more stuff out, and as I understand it, getting cheaper doesn't necessarily mean you're getting the same quality. So if you guys are worried about this stuff, if you want to take control over your own water, this is actually one of those things that I could talk about for a really long time because like you guys probably know, I'm a gear guy. This is a cool piece of kit. You're seeing it on the screen. It's a very attractive unit. And we have one sitting in my kid's bathroom where every night I hear the little bing, and then I hear the water being dispensed, and I know that they're getting fresh, clean water, and it's rolling in to their beds with them in their little water bottles. They've got Patriot Cooler water bottles they take to bed now too. Check it out, covepure.com/Kyle, covepure.com/Kyle. The name Kyle on the end there is going to save you $200 off their normal unit price, covepure.com/Kyle. Link in the show description. Let's do today's program. We're going to talk about all the things that are making me have beef with Donald Trump again. All right, let's see here. Let's see what we've got going on. Do we have problems over on YouTube still? It seems like we may. So for YouTube folks, are you guys with us? You're not with us yet, it looks like. I'm going to continue on, and worst case scenario, this will be visible to folks later on. I want to start with a quotation that I found over on X yesterday. Someone created a little meme of it. You're seeing, what is in the background here? What is this? This is the house of James Madison, right? He was a Virginian. He was the architect of the Virginia Plan, which helped put together our U.S. Constitution. And he said something that I think is quite important. The background image is his home, Montpelier. And the quotation says, "Charity is no part of the legislative duty of the government." None at all. Isn't that the way that we believe it should go? Why are we taking charity, which is something that should be given freely, and it should be given of your own volition, and we are compelling it on behalf of folks who may not otherwise be inclined to do so? When we have government assistance programs, for all of their goodwill, I think they do a couple of things. Number one, they shut down private charity because they take more money out of your pocket, and you cannot take it and give it to who you would wish. You cannot maintain a accountability for it because it's not locally controlled. It's not within your purview. It now goes away into some black box of government funds, and then they dole them out to their favored persons. Charity is not part of the duty of the government. And that is a relatively conservative value. But taking care of the poor is still part of our duty. So these are not in conflict. There's nothing altruistic about the way our government works. It almost always scratches backs that scratch their own. There's a reason why we talk about the federal government being a self-licking ice cream cone. It takes care of itself. It takes care of the people who take care of it. And so its interests are those who lobby loudest, who have the most proximity, who are the most visible, who may have the most campaign donations. To me, that's problematic because we did have someone step forward and say that we were going to do an America First agenda. And if we're shutting down things like EBT, which I'm 100% behind, by the way, these people seem very entitled and ungrateful, and I'm not a big fan of it. I think that the fact that it comes from a government and not a person makes them think that this is just something that is being bestowed upon them. This is the concept of the Godverment, where people end up praying, appealing, whining, complaining, protesting to a government, and they never consider the fact that all the government is funded by us. I hate that expression, "we the people," because I think it's so ignorant, and I think the people who say it tend to not have ever read any of the documents that are associated with the way our government is actually set up. We have a pretty ignorant voting base in this country, if we're being honest. Folks that don't know what it is. We have a lot of people that swore allegiance to a constitution that have never read the Constitution. How many of you that enlisted at the age of 17 or 18 years old? I was 27. but I probably was less informed on the Constitution that I swore to defend with my life than I am today. How many of us can honestly admit that we probably didn't really know what we were signing up for? And then you end up in all kinds of weird positions. How many people have joined government service and said that they're going to defend certain values, not knowing what those values are? That seems problematic. So let's talk about government shutdown. We might as well. They're still closed. The government impasse. This is interesting how it's phrased because this is coming from CBS. They're my go-to right now when it comes to this stuff. Do we not have YouTube still? We're still not getting YouTube. Give it a try. I'm trying to push the YouTube out for folks that are listening over there. We'll see in a second here. And I'll probably have to upload a fresh file. That's just one more thing. By the way, when I was talking to, I'll just break an aside right here. When I was talking to the tech support yesterday for Restream, which may or may not be based in India, it was hard to say. There was a guy named Justin with a picture of someone who didn't look like a Justin to me. When I was talking to them, they said, well, it's obviously your fault. And I said, why is that? I've got 500 shows under my belt under this exact setup. And he was like, well, you haven't updated your software. And I was like, yeah, that's on purpose. I didn't want to update the software. It was intentional. I wanted to maintain a stability. Whenever I update the software, then shenanigans happen. And they were like, well, you're losing 6.3% of the packets that you're sending over to us. And that's why yesterday you saw that the file was broken up. If you saw glitches yesterday and you didn't want to have glitches, you can always go over and check it out on Spotify and you'll get the clean thing. Again, I record it locally, but sometimes there's an interruption between me and them. There's an interruption between the honest truth, which shouldn't actually have any slant to it, and the way that our news media continues to cover things. The government impasse is causing GOP senators to meet with Donald Trump. No matter what they do, they attempt to slant this towards being a Republican shutdown. That's what I'm seeing. And Republicans are doing their best to push the alternative. But the funny thing is I think the Republicans should just own this. There are plenty of America First type ideas that would be possible under a shutdown government if the Republicans had the balls to just own it. But instead, what we find is this sort of, what do they call it? A gynocracy, a gynocracy. We heard that on our Sunday sit down. If you didn't listen to my sit down with Marty Combs, that was maybe the biggest walkaway, that we are ruled with feminine values. Here in 2025, for all the bluster and all the sort of New Yorker and the braggadocious nature of Donald Trump, we still have capitulation and this sort of feminine instinct to throw blame and to act like, we don't want to be the ones who are responsible. Men don't mind taking credit for their work. That would be something that would be decidedly different if we just saw Republicans say, we're the party in power, we have both houses of the legislature, we have the White House, and this is our shutdown, and we're fine with it because we are not going to budge. What was the thing we used to hear people say? Come at me, bro. You guys remember things like this? Come at me, bro is a kind of a masculine gym douchebag type thing to say. Come at me, bro. Why would you say something like that? Well, you'd say that because you believe that the ground you're standing on is righteous and that you have the ability to hold that ground and you have a mandate to do so. Or you could just weasel around and act like that's not going on. I love the idea of Republicans owning it. I love the idea of them saying, hey, we met with Donald Trump and Donald Trump feels strongly about the positions that we're holding. We're not going to do a CR, which is something we promised all the way back in October of 2023. We're actually going to make Mike Johnson, who is Smithers, do the thing that we promised. And we've been promising for several years now. We're 2 years deep into lies, no more CRs and no more this and that. Fine, great. Give us single issue appropriation bills and it takes as long as it takes. And Americans would go, okay, maybe I don't like them, but at least they're saying and doing what they said. Meanwhile, they're trying to fight against it when they should be owning it. From CBS News here, giving this kind of push. On Monday, the Senate failed for the 11th time to advance a House-passed measure to fund the government until November 21st. They're only trying to get to the end of next month or get to Thanksgiving, I suppose. Johnson said Democrats are eating up the clock. Instead, what Johnson ought to be saying is, Democrats have given us a great opportunity to show that they're not interested in accountability, which is what we ran on. Amusingly, CBS also says that Democratic senators are putting together a competing bill that would pay all federal workers. No, the entire point is many of those workers have zero business being in government. What's funny is there's unlimited amounts of clips of both sides of the aisle being disingenuous about this particular issue. Here is former vice presidential candidate and my former senator, Tim Kaine, getting stuck facing his own words. This is from NBC's Meet the Press. There's something amusing about these left-wing organizations owning their own, because they actually do want to see federal government open up, and they do think that it's important. The problem is, for all of the establishment, the longer you leave the quote-unquote government closed, the more people realize that it doesn't actually make a difference to anybody that cares.
You know, Senator, back in 2019, you made a similar argument during that shutdown that Republicans are making now. Republicans at the time were asking for more funding for a border wall. You said, let's reopen the government first. I want to play a little bit of what you had to say.
We first should reopen government. Why punish people who are applying for food stamps because the president is having a temper tantrum? Open government first.
So, Senator, by your own logic, should Democrats not vote to reopen the government first and negotiate later?
Kristen, here's what's different now. The president told the Republicans to write this budget without any Democratic involvement.
Oops. Yeah, how do you deal with that? Those are your own words. Well, let me try to make an excuse. Let me just play you a little bit of what the real game is. I'm going to get to it in 1 second, because the real game is, if you pretend to stand on principles, then you can get people who are motivated in your base to give money. There's nothing honest about the way this thing is being carried out. The messaging is equally lying on both sides. And again, wouldn't it be nice if somebody just stood up in a masculine way, in a non-feminized way, and said, we are the party in power. We are exercising that power to not open nonsense. And our government is full of it. There's an article that it was run over at CNN today saying, here's who gets paid and who doesn't get paid during a federal government shutdown. There should have been an indicator for those working in the government. And if you are listening in the government and you are not getting paid for your work, and you are being deemed non-essential, and you've been deemed non-essential previously, wasn't that a warning call to you? I was considered essential, and I didn't get a paycheck, and I didn't care. It didn't bother me because I built myself up the way that every other American should. My friend Garrett O'Boyle went 1,100 days without a paycheck. And I went for 14 months where I was considered to be an employee who was suspended forever, never to return. My sympathies are very low, and I've walked that walk. So lest anyone say, well, you know, what is it? Deal with it. Deal with the fact that you get a paycheck, whether or not your business is solvent, because the federal government is basically operating at a deficit that is unbelievable to anyone who actually runs a real business. You cannot function the way that it does. And yet, it stays open. So every single paycheck is really a blessing and not an entitlement. But it does go to my belief that the federal government, generally speaking, hires people as a jobs program, and it tends to lean left because those people believe that government is a solution, and it's necessary. Everyone thinks that their job is required. What turns out is that most of them are not, and we found that out when we shut off the paychecks. All right. In addition to lawmakers, Supreme Court justices, federal judges will all still receive their paychecks thanks to the Constitution. Apparently, the courts are not working, though, because I do have some lawsuits that are in the federal system, and they are not advancing at this point. So will political appointees who are confirmed by the Senate. That means Kash Patel, that means Pam Bondi, and all the members of the cabinet. They are all still receiving a paycheck. Also, roughly 830,000 federal workers will continue to be paid during this impasse, according to the Bipartisan Policy Center, which reviews the shutdown contingency plans filed by agencies. And that's because their compensation doesn't rely on annual appropriations from Congress. Instead, they're paid through other spending packages, one such as the Big Beautiful Bill or the Inflation Reduction Act, which was the so-called Green New Deal. These fees and other resources, there's also only days before We are going to see missing of 2 million active duty and reservist members of the military. We're going to miss their check. The administration announced that it would use $8 billion in Pentagon research and development funds to cover the payroll through the middle of October. So they're basically on an unpaid situation right now. There isn't enough money to cover till the next month, which tells you how much money we spend on our military on a monthly basis, on a payroll to payroll basis. If $8 billion only buys you 2 weeks, that's an awful lot of money to be spending. The Trump administration has moved to pay the Federal Bureau of Investigation special agents, according to Kash Patel. No idea why. No idea why. Honest to God, I have no idea why. Plus 70,000 law enforcement personnel at the Department of Homeland Security, to include Customs and Border Protection and Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and the U.S. Secret Service and other divisions will also still receive their paychecks, said Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem. That means that roughly 730,000 federal employees are working without pay, while another 670,000 have been furloughed. And what I've been told by people who work in the executive branch is that many people are functioning as though they are furloughed, even though they're at work, because that's sort of like, we're not getting paid, so why would I do any work? Even though the odds are almost 100% that they will get back paid for all the time that they're actually working. That is the sense of entitlement that we get out of our federal government. So the people that are getting paid are basically our gun carriers and our security elements, the things that we would actually expect our government to be able to do. Protect us from force and fraud, to be able to secure a border, to be able to make sure that we are not open to foreign invasion and threat, like things that are actually well defined in the Constitution. Most of it I actually tend to agree with. Does that mean that I trust federal law enforcement? Of course not. No, I worked there. I know how bad it can be. But I at least understand that its mindset, its mission, and its mandate do actually exist, whereas charity and a bunch of the weird sort of oversight functions that we've put in under the commerce clauses and the weights and measures that don't make any sense to me, that the federal government should be involved in inspection of different foods. And, there's this instinct that we have towards safety. We have this belief, this desperate want for someone to do the due diligence on things and look out for our best interest. And we think, well, we're really glad that we have the Food and Drug Administration or the U.S. Department of Agriculture is going to do inspections on things. And then you realize, well, it's still part of the government and it's still pretty darn flawed, and it does still serve its own interest before anything else. And it is very open to compromise or corruption, just like any other human institution. And it is so far away from the end line consumer. If you got a bad beef product that apparently was cleared by USDA, or if you got a drug interaction that was not well listed, and can you go back and get any kind of recourse from the FDA or from the USDA? The answer is no. You're not going to be able to do that. You're not even going to be able to get recourse if somebody in federal law enforcement, in part of their job, did something that ended your life. There's a great story about whether or not it was part of the scope of duty when a ICE agent or an HSI investigator, and I'm not real clear on what the story was, this goes back a couple of years ago, was following a suspected cartel human trafficker from the border in California running on I-5 northbound. There was a surveillance team that was in pursuit of this individual car. And when you run surveillance, one of the things you have to do is occasionally you have to make a turn to indicate that you are not surveilling the subject that you actually are surveilling. And so running down the line, they're trying to catch up with this vehicle, and he's running a parallel route that was north-south on like a surface type street or an access type road. And I don't remember what the state highway was, but it was some kind of other highway system, not the interstate. Was doing 90 miles an hour, give or take, and T-boned somebody and killed them. And that agent was not liable for that death because the agent was pursuing his duty that was within the scope of the job that they expected. And so your accountability for the federal government is going to be very, very, very low. In fact, our accountability for the people that actually run this stuff and write these checks is very, very low. And they're actually incentivized to create conflict because that's how they raise money. I alluded to this a little bit earlier. Here's a couple of Republicans. You'll see Mike Johnson, a.k.a. Smithers, sitting in the background. They're saying something about Senator Ossoff from Georgia. But they're saying something that could be true for any one of them at any given time. that conflict and acting like they are being persecuted and acting like they are standing up. Every single time that I see a politician in Washington, D.C. doing something, they use the word fight. Have you noticed that too? Have you all noticed that? That the word, I will fight for this thing. I will fight for your entitlements. I will fight for Social Security benefits. I will fight for the government to open back up. I will fight for federal payroll to go through. I will fight for this foreign aid to help out this thing that we care about so desperately. They always want to fight for something. What they don't want to do is actually just show up and do their damn jobs and vote, which is what they're supposed to do. They won't just show up and do the thing that they actually promised. It's way better to act like you're being hindered by someone else. And if y'all just will give me a little bit more money, then I can get it done. If I just had a couple more campaign donations, listen to this calculus. I think this comes from either leaked text messages or this discussion that was going on. Again, this is a claim that is attributed to something that happened with Senator Ossoff down in Georgia, that it's much better to continue the shutdown and allow the fight to continue because that's where the fundraising value is.
Another Democrat said, Senator Ossoff's calculation is, quote, do I vote to open the government up and get crushed and can't raise a single dollar of low dollar money? Or do I vote to shut the government down and get $3 million from online fundraising? That's disgusting. Senator Ossoff is more concerned about getting low-dollar donations from maybe some donor in California who's going to click on an email and give him $100 for his reelection, and so he's causing suffering on tens of thousands of people in his home state of Georgia. Senator Ossoff ought to send that tainted, dirty money back if he's raised $3 million off of the shutdown, off of the suffering he's caused, just so that he can get some more money from radicals around the country.
Do you see the self-righteous nodding by these weak pricks that are standing there behind him, including Smithers, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson? He's nodding up and down vigorously. Yes, he should send that money back. He's going to get money from radical Californians. Is he raising money on this right now? The answer is always yes. To act like they've never done anything like this, I don't believe him. Neither should you. None of these people are honest operators. It's really disgusting. And I can't tell you how many times I say the word gross when I think about these people, but they are gross. If you went into a business that was operated by folks like this, you would walk out of that business and you would not do business there. You would rate them poorly on every single ability to click a star rating. Their Yelp reviews would be garbage nonstop. Because the minute that you need something from them that you think should actually involve their office or their ability to wield some clout on behalf of the federal government, they won't do it. I say that knowing what I'm talking about because I brought forward some of this stuff. I brought forward a lot of malfeasance. Do you realize that there are like 115 references to my name, Seraphin, specifically in the House weaponization findings document that was released at the end of their term? It's like 17,000 pages. They mentioned me over 112 times or 115 times. I've never, not once, had a single person on that committee reach out and call me, even though they were more than happy to talk about me in sworn testimony left and right. And I was bad-mouthed. There's perjury in there. There are abject lies. Not a single criminal referral was made. And when I've reached out to them, nobody had time. They never have time. I was too politically hot. And so are you. Oh, you need something for your kid? You need something because you're having a local law enforcement issue and you'd like to be able to lean some federal authority on it. You're having a problem with the federal government or a federal agency and you'd like to have something done. You can't get your VA benefits done fast enough. Something that you earned because you were disabled in the line of duty while you were working for this country. They don't give a shit. I guarantee, though, if you click on one of those donor emails and you throw a 4 or a 5-figure donation their way, you might get a little bit of attention for a few seconds. Yuck. Yeah, I hate all of it. We're going to talk about a whole bunch more, so just hang tight here. Here we go. All right, before we do, Patriot Coolers is our longest sponsor. These people are great. They are out of Houston, Texas. They make a fantastic product. You're going to get your money's worth out of it, and I use their stuff every single day, including today. I have the wood grain, highly classy 20-ounce coffee mug. So it's actually just a regular tumbler, but I'm using it as a coffee mug today. Spill-proof stuff, patriotcoolers.com. The promo code Kyle will save you 10% as usual. It's the same amount you'd get if you were a military veteran, but you don't have to upload anything. Check out their hard coolers. It's RV season for those of you who love fall. It might be hunting season for those of you who are going to go into deer or elk camp. You can fit a lot of stuff in the 50 quart. I use it all the time when I go to Sam's Club or Costco. That's what we've used. We've used this for quite a while now. This is something you can use regularly. It will last you for a very long time. It is built to last. With the parts that may wear out, you can swap them out very easily. Check out Patriot Coolers. I'm a huge fan of all their stuff. I use them. My kids are drinking out of their water bottles. My wife and I use their cups every single day. There's almost always one on my desk. I travel with them. When I go to a protest to go see what's happening at No Kings, there's one with me right there. It doubles as a weapon. If I need to dent somebody's head with it, I'm happy to try it. Patriot Coolers is the website. Coolers with an S on the end. patriotcoolers.com. You will get good stuff from them, and you will also pay a fair price. They haven't raised their prices since the tariffs or any of the other things going on, so they're kind of eating it right now. Check out my friends over there. Link in the show description as usual. Let's talk about this fun story. This is also fun to watch, the dual coverage. I haven't gotten into any of these slides here, or any of these news stories I've got. U.S. Marshals, an undocumented immigrant shot during ICE stop in Los Angeles, officials say. I want to read that one more time. A U.S. Marshal and an undocumented immigrant were shot during an ICE stop in Los Angeles. It sounds like it just sort of happened and nobody was involved in it. And then you go to check out the New York Post and see the actual headline. The real headline, the more honest headline. An illegal immigrant was shot after allegedly ramming his car into feds. And he's a well-known TikToker who films ICE arrests. I went and checked out his TikTok. He does indeed film law enforcement interactions, and he does Spanish commentary on top of it. So tough shit, bro. That's a bummer for you. Federal officers say they had to open fire after an undocumented immigrant, aka illegal alien, weaponized his vehicle. He didn't have to weaponize it. A vehicle is always a weapon. That was one of the first things my father taught me about driving. Maybe some of you have kids that are in the driving age right now, and you want to give them a lesson that will stay with them. I'm 43 years old right now. When my dad was teaching me to drive, I was probably 15 years old with my learner's permit. And he said, I can still remember the street. We were on Mockingbird Lane in Coppell, Texas. And we're driving down the street. And he said, your job is to keep your 5,000-pound death trap out of the pile of the other 5,000-pound death traps. I still remember it. Yeah, it's always a weapon. Your vehicle is a weapon. It doesn't need to be weaponized. So quite interesting that they mention this. Of course, it's always in the sub-headline because the lead headline is, God knows what happens. This marshal got shot and illegal alien got shot. Ooh. Written by a woman, no big deal. All right, federal officers attempting to arrest an undocumented immigrant, aka illegal alien, in downtown Los Angeles fired shots that injured the immigrant, and also apparently there was ricochet that injured one of the U.S. Marshals involved in the operation. The shooting happened during what Homeland Security described as a targeted traffic enforcement stop using standard law enforcement procedures. That seems reasonable. Everybody who's gone to law enforcement academy, even FBI agents, learn how to do a traffic stop, even if they don't yet generally do it. The marshals tend to do this quite a bit more. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles said later that the agents tried to box in the vehicle. There's a tactic they can use. Somebody will pull out in front of you and stop the vehicle, and it blocks you in. Okay. They tried to stop a vehicle that was being driven by the suspect or subject known as Carlitos Ricardo Parias. He's 44 of South Los Angeles, also known as of Mexico because he's a Mexican citizen. He was charged with assault on a federal officer. He drove his Toyota Camry both forward and backward. This was not accidental. He did the movement where he tried to shimmy his way out, hitting two of the law enforcement vehicles. Spokesperson for DHS, the Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs, Tricia McLaughlin, said that the federal officers feared for their safety and fired defensive shots. I don't like any of that. Again, call it what it is. They noticed that this person was using deadly force, and they decided to defend themselves against this deadly force. This is not the first time. One of the bullets fired by the federal officers ricocheted and hit a federal law enforcement officer in the hand. That's not great. It's actually really, really hard to shoot at a vehicle. And if you've not trained shooting in, out, or around vehicles, it is a very specific skill set, and most law enforcement do not get it. It is a survival tactic. We used to have one that was called Vehicle Combat Survival Course. I've been through it twice, and it is definitely worth your time. If these guys are not getting access to this training, I hope they will soon. The officer's condition was listed as stable. It was a hand hit. Los Angeles Field Office for the FBI is going to investigate the shooting, as is normal. What's interesting was the coverage of it to me. And of course, luckily, these people are being paid. On the other side of the aisle, on the other side of the country, federal agents staged a raid on Canal Street. This is actually quite interesting to me. There's a couple of guys I've seen that have been doing these interviews. Nick Sorter is one of them. Nate Friedman is one that goes out and does a lot of like on the street interviews, and he starts asking people questions. Nick Sorter specifically was involved in an interview that was highly contentious with a very aggressive, I don't know if he was Haitian or Dominican or something, but he was a black guy that was crazy hostile, got way up in this kid's face, and I didn't actually save the video clip, but I should have, to the point where if I had been in the same situation with my camera down in downtown Austin, I would have shot the guy in the chest. I'm going to tell you that very point blank. If somebody gets up and makes a bunch of hostile threats to you, puts hands in your face, and you can't see what he's doing, and the assumption is based on his posture, his demeanor, his movements, that he represents the potential for serious physical injury, which, by the way, the cameraman is about a foot shorter than this guy, deadly force is necessary to defend yourself against serious bodily injury. For whatever reason, that seemed to have highlighted, and it's possible that our agencies are actually watching more of these feeds than you guys would think, saw and took this guy down. Now, whether that was just accidental or whether it was because they were watching his feed, it's hard for me to say, but I don't hate the idea of it. It's being covered by the New York Times. Dozens of federal officers defended on the sidewalks of Lower Manhattan on Tuesday, detaining several people, drawing protests because, of course, people in New York would rather have people selling stolen goods and violently assaulting people who are doing journalism and walking down the streets, which is well within their First Amendment rights. That's what they're going to go out there. They're selling counterfeit goods. They're doing other criminal activities. This is classic sort of stuff that happens on Canal Street anyway. In fact, Sorter, I think, was saying, you know, like, I bought a Rolex. It's a fake Rolex. And the guy got in his face. He's like, go buy a real Rolex. Like, get off my street, whatever it is. Kind of weird. 50 agents fanned out in the heart of Lower Manhattan on Tuesday, brushing past confused tourists and pedestrians to detain several men near Canal Street, drawing protests. Dozens of people, random people on the street in New York, they're going to go and protest in favor of what? Criminals? Of course, because it's New York. It's not America. Homeland Security described the operation as focused on criminal activity related to counterfeit goods. Some of these people are clearly going to be illegal aliens as well. They unfolded on a stretch where a bunch of African men, were illegally selling bootleg luxury merchandise to tourists, which are a longtime fixture in the area. If you guys have been to New York, if you've been to Canal Street, you know what I'm talking about. It is really not my favorite place to go. I've been there, I think, twice with like work groups. I went there with a group of people from San Francisco when I was working out in the Bay Area, and we flew out to New York, and like the guys that were like real flashy fake dudes wanted to go down and buy fake Rolexes and stuff. That's where you go and find fake purses and whatever else nonsense. Or you find stolen ones and you can pay more for that. The operation appeared to lead to at least 4 detentions, according to witnesses, and they cited dozens of masked agents. You guys are seeing how these guys are dressed on the street. The guy that I like the most is the darker skin, like Hispanic looking guy that's sitting in the back. Maybe he's black, I can't tell, wearing the HSI vest. If you guys are looking on the screen right now, you see it. No fear, no mask, just ready to go. This is the right answer. You know, at the end of the day, I think these guys need to just put their faces out there and stop worrying about it. I never wore a mask on a single operation that we did. We went into all kinds of crappy neighborhoods, places that were close enough that the bad guys could have followed us home when I was working for the Bureau. I do not like the idea of masking federal agents. I understand the instinct, and I know how gross people are, and that they will try to come after your family. There's a reason why they arm you, and there's a reason why you understand what the deadly force policy looks like. If you need to defend yourself, then just do it. What we need is a government that's going to back them up. We know that's not going to happen. All right. I'm going to move a little bit further on. These are things that we are spending money on right now. We are spending money on these things. So where did that money come from? And I saw this coming from NBC. We are currently spending money that is not even supposed to be allocated because theoretically the government shut down. But as you heard, there are like 800,000 people getting paid, plus a bunch of people in the military got paid for the last 2 weeks, even though there was a shutdown. So let's talk about tax brackets, which are apparently changing. And next year, you will have a different tax bracket that is supposed to be keeping up with inflation. And that means in April of 2027, the following things will be true. The IRS, generally speaking, adjusts tax brackets each year for inflation, which just goes on to show you that your money loses value every single year by design, and that there is a protocol in place so that they don't have what's called bracket creep. It's actually got a name, and that is the name of dollars being worth less, and therefore they move the brackets up so that you are being charged in concert with what the actual cost is. But the funny thing is that if they didn't do the bracket creep, then you guys would be worse off. So I guess it's good that they move this thing up. When tax filers file their returns in April of 2027, they'll see that the tax bracket thresholds have increased by about 2.7% from the prior year. This is meant to account for inflation. They're always doing this in arrears, which means they're always going to be a little bit behind the schedule. So that's kind of a bummer. An individual filer who earns $100,000 in the fiscal year of 2026 will owe approximately $13,170 federal dollars in income taxes, which is $279 less than taxpayers would have owed the year before. But of course, their money is worth less as well. This guy named Tom Sabin, who is the Director of Tax Content and Government Relations for the National Association of Tax Professionals, which is a trade group for accountants, refers to it as bracket creep and the way that they keep track of these things. They're also going to move up the standard deduction by 7.3% for all filers over the 2025 rate, which means that the standard deduction will be $32,200 for married couples filing jointly. This is boring, but maybe interesting to you. It's super interesting to me because I know more about my taxes and I know more about the money that I'm spending today than I did 4 years ago, for sure, when I was working for the government. I always had an instinct about how much of my money was going away. When you actually write that check in April, when you're physically writing out that check, because you pay not on a W-2 that automatically deducts it, when you're paying yourself first, and then you have to go into your pocket out of a savings account that you've been holding on to go pay the government, either installments or at the end of the year, you can feel it a lot more. That bite is a lot more when it's a 4 or 5 figure dollar amount that you're writing out. And again, $100,000, the expectation is $13,170. But of course, that doesn't factor in the stuff you're going to pay for Medicare, doesn't factor in Social Security, all the other nonsense that our government continues to have because we just have unlimited pieces of this. So all of that is to say, there's this hope that we would have something called America First. And America First, I would think, would mean that those dollars that we write out in our tax brackets are going to go to things that benefit Americans first. And hence today's main topic, and the question of beef and beef with the Trump administration, and beef being both literal and figurative at this point. We're going to talk about that in 1 second. Let me first say, find the show on Spotify. If you had any problems with today, if you were watching on YouTube and you're like, hey, where the hell is the program? It doesn't look right. Check us out over on Spotify. It's KyleSerafinshow.com. That will take you to the website. You don't even have to download the app. You'll be audio and video options there. You can control the speed, all the other things. There's a transcript. You can skip through chapters for stuff you don't like. It's really a good thing. But if you are watching on the other video platforms, we still have our biggest audience over on Rumble and our second biggest over there, I think, on YouTube. Check them out with a thumbs up. Give me a share if you want to share it with somebody. They're like, hey, have you seen this channel? Are you subscribed to it? Would you like to be? You could do that. You can also subscribe and get us over the 15,000 subscriber mark, which would be great. I think we just hit, we're hitting new records every single day on YouTube just because we've been so poorly performing for so many years that it's nice to see, but we can still use more and your help. While I'm talking about it, I'll also let you know that you guys may see a Spotify canned ad right now. That's my heads up to you. We do get paid through that and it monetizes as well as any other sponsor. So I appreciate you guys tolerating those things. They're important to what we're doing. Check that out right now. Again, Rumble, X, Locals, YouTube, all those things are all available to you. Let's talk about beef. All right, I'm no expert on beef. And if one of you guys has a beef expert or if one of you has a large cattle ranch and you would like to come on the show and talk to me about beef, I would happily discuss it. I think that beef farming is really important and beef ranching, rather. I had a buddy in New Mexico that I used to sit on a very, very cold pole barn roof and shoot coyotes off, who was moving 150 to 200 head of cattle through his feed lot. It was about a 25-acre property. It bordered, I don't know, a couple thousand acres of state land. And so I did spend some time around beef ranchers. He was a legit cowboy as far as you could be. He was a professional full-time. He used to ride rodeos. He worked it at a state level. He was working on behalf of the state universities. And so they have these huge ag programs. If you guys don't realize it, if your state has an agricultural university and they have an agricultural program where they have, you know, heads of beef and so on, somebody has to be a legit cowboy that gets out there and paid for it. So he was a state-funded New Mexico cowboy right up until the point where they asked him to get a jab. And like you'd expect, he was a real cowboy and he said no. And so he went into business on his own, and it was a tough business from all that I could tell. He lived out of a trailer, at least initially, bought the property because the land was more important than where he lived. And, you know, guy lived hard. And it was not an easy life. It was not like, some sort of fairy tale that people see. This article is from Newsweek. It is dated yesterday, October 21st. Sold us out. Farmers are outraged at Trump's Argentina, beef deal. Argentinian? Cattle farmers and agricultural groups are voicing opposition to President Donald Trump's plan. This is a very conservative group of people to begin with. Let's just agree on that. They are upset with the import of Argentine beef in an effort to address record high prices. Trump said he was exploring options on Sunday while aboard Air Force One and defending the means of assisting Argentina's struggling economy and their president. I'm appalled President Trump, who campaigned on how much he loved farmers, again, this is that America First thing, is putting America's farmers out of business by helping Argentinian farmers first, says John Boyd. He's a cattle and crop farmer, and he's the founder of the National Black Farmers Association. Trump set us up, and he sold us out. This is not what America First looks like to people, and I can understand exactly why they would be pissed off about that. They say on Newsweek why it matters. He enjoyed immense popularity with farmers before his victory in 2024, going on to win more than 3/4 of the farming-dependent counties, according to Investigate Midwest. However, the struggling industry has increasingly expressed frustration with the administration over its trade and immigration policies. Recently, soybean croppers were angered at the large financial support lent to Argentina that went on to ship large quantity of its own soybeans to China. Some see the proposed beef deal as yet another instance of Trump placing interests with a foreign political ally over America's own agricultural sector. How is that America First? I don't know. And I encourage anybody that knows more to explain to me how that serves America's interest first. They got another quote from the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, the NCBA, which also advocates on behalf of ranchers and promotes beef consumption. They said that this expansion with the United States money and access for Argentina to access the U.S. market, it harms American cattlemen and women while also interfering with our free market. The NCBA's family farmers and ranchers have numerous concerns with importing more Argentine beef to lower prices for our consumers, said their CEO, Colin Woodall. Quote, this plan only creates chaos at a critical time of the year for American cattle producers while doing nothing to lower grocery store prices. For those of you who have gone out to try and buy beef, it is wild how much more beef costs in the last couple of years than it did previously. And as I found out from my buddy Ray, when we were hanging out on the roof shooting coyotes, there's something that is not necessarily obvious to all people, but it does make perfect sense. There's a reason why futures is the way that you trade some of these commodities. The issue is when you start bringing on heads of cattle, you take on a certain amount of expense. You have to feed them. You have to either house them or shelter them in some way or form. You have to protect them from predators, which is a real thing. That is a real problem. That's why I've got thermal video of me shooting what looks like dogs. I mean, they just look like dogs. Coyotes do. And we're shooting them because they were hassling cattle and killing them. And every single time one of them would go down, it's hundreds, if not a couple $1,000s, depending on the animal, of value that they've lost, of potential profit or potential even just revenue streams. So it's a difficult thing because you're dealing with live animals that eventually they'll get slaughtered and they will get butchered up, and then you will be able to buy them. And the costs that go into it are the fuel costs, which are not small, the feed cost, which is not small, the property cost. There's always some association, even if they get an ag break when it comes to taxes, maintaining a physical property and fence lines and all the things that go along with it, the heavy equipment and the feeding. Most of them have some kind of tractor equipment or they have some kind of heavy equipment that's going to be able to move big things of hay and so on. I don't know the name for all those things because this is not my business. But I can tell you that when I went out there and saw, it's not like they just have a bunch of cows walking around on the grass and then one day you get to eat them. There's a lot that goes into it. And all of those upfront costs are borne by these ranchers, borne by these farmers, these agricultural workers. And at the end of the day, they have to go out there and try to figure out, can I even make a profit? And so you're going to flood it in with Argentinian beef who have completely different situations and they have very different sort of requirements on them. One of the things that they have to do is they have to maintain these governmental type certifications, and you have to have USDA and you have to have the food inspectors come out there and all this other kind of nonsense. And so there's all of this oversight and it's all born with zero guarantee that they're even going to get profit because that animal could get sick and die before you ever see it, before it ever turns any money. Very, very difficult. Not an easy business, and certainly not America First to go out there and worry about what we're doing with the Argentinians, at least not to me. You guys can explain to me otherwise. If I don't understand it, you let me know. So that's the physical end of us having beef with Trump. That's the literal issue with some beef. Donald Trump was asked about this while he was standing on Air Force One. And so, of course, he had something to say. And I didn't think it was a great answer. And I'm not sure that you will either. Sometimes he swings and he hits. This seems like a swing and a miss. Calling out the reporter for asking the question seems not his best work. Here we go.
Question is, what do you have to say to U.S. farmers who feel that the deal is benefiting Argentina more than it is them, they are
Argentina's fighting for its life, young lady. You don't know anything about it. They're fighting for their life. Nothing's benefiting Argentina. They're fighting for their life. You understand what that means? They have no money. They have no anything. They're fighting so hard to survive. If I can help them survive in a free world, I happen to like the president of Argentina. I think he's trying to do the best he can, but don't make it sound like they're doing great. They are dying. All right? They're dying.
What do you mean by being?
Who cares? Not to be completely callous. Oh my God, there it is. It's in the chat. I love it. Tim said the same thing. Who cares if they're dying or if they're having problems? That's not what America First is. Not to me. Maybe you understand it differently. Please let me know if you do. Please help me understand what it would mean. When you campaign on, we're going to make America great again, and we're going to take care of our country first, and you're saying, do you understand that they're dying? Do you know that the people that are out there are going to end up on the same food stamps that you're going to end up cutting in November? It is a make or break business every single season. What are we talking about here? CNBC said, while U.S. cattle ranchers say that Trump's Argentine beef import talk is no solution to the domestic food supply threat, Trump floated the idea of importing Argentinian beef after his administration's recent bailout for the cash-strapped Latin American nation. Again, I don't know what part of America is in Latin America. I know the word's there, but that doesn't seem like the right thing. Cattle ranchers in Texas and around the country are concerned about screwworm, a parasitic fly that was once eradicated in the United States. It's threatening to come back from the Mexican border. And the talk about Donald Trump importing beef from Argentina, like I'm all over the place on this word, is no long-term solution for beef supply. Under an already stress that consumers have watched beef prices hit record levels. The New World screwworm is a parasitic fly that lays eggs and open wounds on warm-blooded animals. So there's another threat. It's predators, it's disease. The larvae hatch in eggs. They burrow into the tissue that the animals feed on. If caught early, the sick animal can be treated and survive. Human cases are rare, but can be very painful, require medical attention, which means that the United States Department of Agriculture gets itself involved in there. It also has some issues with the Department of Health and Human Services, Center for Disease Control, all kinds of government agencies. All of these things equal more cost because oversight and regulation, they all cost something. They don't have these in other places. I know guys that are willing to sell cattle down to Mexico because it's easier to get the cattle sold because of what's been going on in the United States. Texas is a material contributor to the beef industry, said a guy named Andrew Chopin. He's the co-founder and CEO of a ranch management company called RanchBot Monitoring Solutions. You have millions of beef cattle along the southern border alone, and those people will choose to sell them to Mexico versus us if the money is better and the hassle is lower. U.S. Department of Agriculture has closed the border to Mexico for the import of live cattle and bison and horses off and on since 2024 due to the spread of this New World screwworm. They're trying to manage this thing. You've got ranchers that have been doing it for generations, literally 6th-generation Texas rancher. James Clement III told CNBC that the key to eradicating the screwworm threat is years out. This is not going to be an easy solution. There are a lot of problems that exist in this. And all we ever do is go to the grocery store and pick up beef. If you can find a local beef producer, great. But even that is not cheap. It's not like you're cutting out the middleman and the cost. Any of you have ever gone to a farmer's market to go buy it? My wife and I have done this very recently. It's not cheap. It's not easy. It's just as expensive as if you go buy it somewhere else. And the quality may not be as good. You're winging it. So we got real problems with this situation. And to act like this is something that we should be throwing money towards or we should be most concerned about what's going on in another country, that seems like not the right focus to me. Again, maybe I don't get it. You guys tell me how it's America first to bail out another country like that. And since we're talking about other countries, let's talk about my favorite country, India. Pretty sure it's my favorite country. That's why I live in a neighborhood that is full of people from India, right? Less and less of them. They're actually moving further down towards their tech jobs. President Trump lights Diwali, whatever the hell it's called. It's called a Daya. That's a weird pronunciation or a weird spelling on it. I think the I think the lettering didn't actually make it across in the translation. In the White House for the third consecutive year. You say, Kyle, the third consecutive year? Wait a minute. He's just in his first year of his second term. That doesn't make any sense. Well, that's true. It doesn't. Because Donald Trump has lit whatever this lamp thing is, and I'm not going to get deep into it because I do not care. Donald Trump has lit this Daya lamp thing every year except in 2020 and held a celebration in the White House every single year, 2017, 2018. This is from 2019. In 2020, they didn't do it because of COVID. They did it again this year, and suddenly it's flooding everything that I see online. It is absolutely dominating my social media feed. I'm going to play you a couple of things, including Kash Patel, who's standing there on the screen right now, who goes on this ass-kissing spree, which is pretty disgusting. And I started asking myself, why on earth are we hearing about this thing called Diwali? D-I, it's a W, but it's pronounced with a V, I'm told. Why are we seeing so much of this stuff? Why are Republicans fawning all over it? It's every single side of the political aisle has just rolled over. Is that America first? Because America doesn't have this enormous population of Hindus, it turns out. We really do not. We do have a shitload more than we used to, though. Excuse my language. The Hindus make up approximately 1% of the United States adult population. One study found it to be 0.9%. It's a small religious group. It's the fourth most common religious minority. They go as follows: Christians of all flavor, then Judaism behind that, and then Hindus and Muslims kind of vie. It looks like there's a little bit more on the Muslim population over the Hindus, but they're both roughly in the 1% category. But what's interesting is the percentage of Americans who identify as Hindus, this is just AI stuff from Google, the percentage of Americans who identify as Hindu have grown from 0.4% of our population in 2007 to 0.9% of our population in sometime last year or the year before. So we've more than doubled the amount of Hindu people in this country in, let's call it, my post-collegiate years, in the years that I've been in the private sector working and the public sector and so on. It's not evenly distributed. There's a huge chunk around the San Francisco Bay Area. There's a massive chunk around Austin. Roughly 20% of the Indian immigrants and the Hindu population exist in California. A bunch of them are also in New Jersey. About 11% of the Hindu population of the United States is in Texas. And they just erected a massive statue both in New Jersey and another one in Houston, Texas. There have been some comments that I've read, people who are doing analysis that said if we were to shut down the H-1B visa program, which brings in an inordinate amount of Indian people into the United States, if we were to shut that down, you would not only tank the real estate market where I live, but also in Dallas. Now, there's some real world consequences to doing something like that by propping up a real estate market that is artificially high because we're bringing in people from foreign nations to come in here and earn money. And if you would tank it, who would that benefit? It would obviously hurt the people that are trying to sell that are not immigrants from another country. And it would obviously hurt people that are native-born American citizens that are property owners that are looking to sell their house in Dallas or in Austin. But it also makes opportunity for people that are trying to enter into these spaces. It's quite interesting to me that the population has grown double. And there have been Republican and Democrat presidents. And for whatever it's worth, it was very obvious to me. The Joe Biden administration also celebrated this Diwali thing, and so has the Trump administration. So don't think that your guy got away with not being part of this. They've been part of it each time. Here he is lighting the lamp thing. Let's go.
Would you like to come to light?
Yeah, if you want. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Now, listen, I don't know enough about Donald Trump's spirituality, and I don't think any of us are an expert on it. But what I do think is that he has publicly stated that he's a non-denominational Christian. And there are some things about being a Christian that fit into that definition. And one of them is that you accept that there are these things, we call them the 10 Commandments. They're kind of like some baseline laws. There's also some continuation on that if you follow into the New Testament, those of you who know what I'm talking about. But I think that the first commandment still holds if you're a non-denominational Christian. I'm the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. No other gods before me. What is it when you're out there lighting a lamp that's supposed to celebrate some nonsensical thing? I don't even know what they're actually celebrating. Maybe you do. How about we ask Harmeet Dillon? She's a Justice Administration official. I, generally speaking, like the politics of Harmeet Dillon. I've spoken to her one time on the phone, and I didn't find her to be the most loving and agreeable person, but she is a lawyer. She was talking to me about lawyer things. She gave me a reasonable answer for what we were talking about, but I don't have any personal relationship with this lady. And I've watched her roll out and talk about this, and she seems very, very excited. Now, she's not Hindu. She's a Sikh. I think she explains that in this clip. If not, she explained it in another clip. She pointed this out multiple times. And so here we go. Let's just hear what she's celebrating over there in the White House. She was in the background. She was on the left-hand side of this photo that you're seeing. Kash Patel on the right-hand side, Harmeet on the left.
Hi, friends. I'm here at the White House for the Diwali celebration in the Oval Office. Really excited to be invited this year, Assistant Attorney General at Civil Rights, and looking forward to seeing a lot of my friends in the administration there to celebrate the Festival of Light, the victory of good over evil and light over darkness, which is what we celebrate here in this administration and strive for at the DOJ every day at the Civil Rights Division.
That's bullshit. Don't give me that. We already have that holiday. It's called Christmas. We do it in America. How many of you guys get this day off? I'm finding out that more and more people are getting Diwali off in places. My own mother said that they celebrated it in her Montessori school. I just reminded her about the first commandment last night. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. And I'm allowed to not like it, it turns out. And I don't see how that's an America First type thing, because bringing in a bunch of people that artificially are changing something and then you are acknowledging them. 1%, they are the number 4 most common religion. And the number 4 most common religion is 1%. The number 3 most common religion is 1%. The number 2 most common religion in America is about 2.25%, 2.5%. So all of them together are not 5%. But still, despite the decline that we talked about yesterday from 90% Christian identifying households in America in 1970, we still have over 60% of households in this country still identify one way. It's not just the majority, it is the vast majority. And it is the single biggest by orders of magnitude. And that's the reason why all the holiday systems that we have an Easter break or a spring break, but they're the same thing. We have a Christmas break, which you can call whatever, the winter holidays, which they do in fact talk about light over dark. And if you're Christian, you know exactly why that is. And I don't need to preach to you about that. It just turns out that Christmas is a holiday that Americans celebrate. There will not be a Christmas tree lit in the president or the prime minister of India's residence. They won't be doing this in whatever their lead office is. So placating this and acting like this is somehow reasonable or normal, it makes me sick. I actually despise it. It's truly disgusting to me that you're going to push this crap on when the number of people, it is a rounding error of people that are Hindu in the United States. And you don't have to like that. And for anybody that says one way or another, you're living in a Christian country with Christian values that did believe in private charity, as we talked about from James Madison. And yet, does every religious group now have a claim to be able to have an official ceremony inside the White House? Is that what we should be seeing? They do a freaking Easter egg roll. Why? They do an Easter egg roll because it is a Christian holiday and because the vast majority of people on both sides of the aisle fit into one category. It is common that you swear in on a Bible, and when you don't, you're like, wait, what? They didn't swear in on a Bible? What did they swear in on? How weird is that? It's an anomaly. A fair number of people in the Trump administration have done that, by the way. Here's Kash Patel doing some professional knob slobbery. He cannot help himself but fall all over to his knees with his face upturned to try to catch favor from his boss. And I'm telling you, Harmeet Dillon said, I'm really happy to be here at the White House. That's fine. Like, I don't have any, that wasn't nauseating to me. This is nauseating. Every single chance he has to basically simp and tell Donald Trump what an incredible leader he is and all this other nonsense. You tell me if this ends it for you with Kash Patel. Didn't we think that we were getting somebody that was going to be conservative? How about the conservative guy that celebrates diversity? That word should be a death sentence for people that are on the quote unquote conservative or the Republican side of the coin. It's not, but this is what they do.
President, it's an honor to be a first-generation Indian American whose parents lawfully immigrated to this country, and under your leadership, so many more millions of Americans are living that dream. And to celebrate it here in the Oval Office on Diwali, which you said, rightfully so, is a triumph of good over evil. It's just an incredible honor. It's incredibly humbling. Indian Americans around the world and Indians around the world are thrilled that you are such a profound leader in sharing this diversity with the world, and we can't thank you enough, and happy Diwali.
Great. Well, thank you. Congratulations.
Ugh. Yuck. Nasty. Really, really gross. When I say this is what they do, I mean they being Republicans, because Republicans are just as bad as the other side. I didn't hear a Valhalla reference, but I would love to see that. Wouldn't that have been nice? Could we just get a little bit more from director Valhalla? I actually liked him better when he was interested in Norse mythology than when he was leaning into whatever this thing is. I'm pretty sure there was an executive order about diversity. Maybe you guys can tell me otherwise, but I'm pretty sure there was. Okay. I'm done with this, other than I'm going to re-highlight. Less than 1% of the American population identifies with this religion. But it does seem like it's growing. And the thirsty FBI director just cannot help but plead for just a little bit of love from daddy every time. It's really nauseating to me. I think groveling of any kind, it doesn't matter who you're groveling to, I always think it's gross. I think Lindsey Graham groveling is gross. You guys are mentioning in the chat John Cornyn. He's freaking gross. All of these people, the minute that they just basically drop all principle and they just fall all over themselves for somebody who has power or money, it makes me sick. So I did some digging in it because I was really interested. I wanted to know more about immigration. I wanted to know more about welfare. And I wanted to know, this all falls into the category of what is America first? Because if we're going to cut off money to EBT, and by the way, I got some good videos for you on that. Should we just lead with that? Let me start by telling you, I found this study. This comes from some sort of UK-based blog, but the people who were writing it came from Louisiana State University. Is that where they're from? They're from this, it's one of the Louisiana schools. Louisiana State University. Yeah, I got that right. How immigrants use welfare influence America's views of public welfare as a whole. So this actually makes a lot of sense to folks, I think. When you see certain people using a product or a government service, it shapes the way that you think about that government service or that product or whatever. So when we see immigrants, including illegal immigrants, using American welfare systems, it changes the way that we feel about all of it, even if those people are not perfectly representative of what goes on there. Their statement opens up, it says, over the past several decades, immigration has become one of the most important forces shaping how Americans think about welfare. They said, historically speaking, it used to be about race. Much earlier research showed negative stereotypes about African Americans. They mean black people. I'm just going to correct that because I don't know what the hell an African American is. Elon Musk isn't African American. Anyway, stereotypes about blacks eroded support for welfare, making U.S. welfare politics heavily racialized. However, in more recent years, immigration has become the dominant lens through which Americans think about welfare. Earlier research, they found that Americans' immigration attitudes influenced their support for the welfare state, and then they introduced the concept of immigrantizationalism of welfare politics, because immigrants are often seen as outsiders, incompetent, untrustworthy, and undeserving of government assistance. Why would they think that? Why would people think that foreigners that are not part of our system? You know, the funny thing is, when people come to America and assimilate and speak English and live by our value systems, we actually don't have any problem with it, it turns out. It's when they come in and they maintain some sort of non-American culture and try to force that down and run around through the streets with American flags. Oh, wait, no, they do it with Mexican flags or Palestinian flags or something. Immigrants are seen as outsiders, incompetent, untrustworthy, and more importantly, undeserving of government assistance. I'm going to be very principled on this. I actually don't like government assistance at all. That's why I led off with James Madison. I'll read you the quote again. Charity is no part of the legislative duty of the government. The government has no duty to provide charity. That doesn't absolve you individually of being responsible for looking out for your neighbor, for looking out for those in your community. All of those things make perfect sense that you would do those things. It's better for you. It's better for everyone. But the government should not have any part in that. That is the conservative position. Republicans are not conservative. They're 100% willing to cry over this stuff. They're going to say, oh, we're going to make people do without, and we're going to go after and try to help people. Well, okay, fine. But that's not what it's about. For context, how much does it matter that Americans have attitudes about immigration, and what does that do to their attitudes about welfare in general? Research shows that it's not just immigration attitudes, but also the context that people live in where welfare attitudes change. Specifically, they examine how American immigration attitudes combine with the context of how immigrants in their state are using welfare. So how are people around you using it? One of the reasons that I left the last parish I was at is because they constantly were asking for money for rent assistance and for food. And a huge chunk of their population, as far as I could tell, were non-English speaking, non-American illegal aliens, or maybe they came here as migrant workers. But all I could tell was I didn't want anything to do with that. In states where immigrants are using welfare at a relatively low level, there are less negative attitudes about public welfare. But when immigrant participation in welfare is high, sometimes it primes those predisposed and also amplifies native-born citizens' hostility towards public welfare spending. You guys will be happy to know that they spent significant amounts of money and time and salaries for academics researching the thing that all of us know, that when you see something that looks unjust, that you feel like it is not just. This was actually the most telling to me. I have to tell you, the statistics are freaking staggering. Between 2004 and 2016, the percentage of immigrant households using some form of welfare ranged from 11.7% to 60% across all 50 states. Some states were as low as 11.7%, others as high as 60% across the 50 states, with an overall average of 40.3% of immigrant households using some form of welfare. I will say that one more time because this comes from a study that is done by people in Louisiana at a university and also a Chinese professor out of Rhode Island. Immigrant households using some form of welfare had an overall average of 40.3%. Which is, by the way, higher than the national average. We're always told that immigrants use less welfare than people who are native born. It turns out the highest numbers I can find about people in America using welfare that are native citizens is about 1/3. That's the highest numbers. So they use it at more. Our work shows, that this state context matters, and when immigrant welfare participation in a state is higher, people tend to be less supportive of welfare spending overall. Freaking shocking stuff right now, isn't it? And all of this has to do, for me, with the idea that we're shutting down a system of American welfare, which I don't want to begin there in the first place. But if we're going to start shutting off the levers of money and turning off the trickle, shouldn't we be worrying about things like not throwing $20 to $40 billion to Argentina if we have people here? Can we not prioritize things to America first? Like, let's go ahead and shut off the stuff that's going outside of our house first before we get anywhere else. There was also a pretty interesting story within the last couple of days talking about foreign aid that is being diminished across the world. The United States is not the only ones doing it. Since they got into office, there are other countries, including 9 of the biggest donors in Europe, that are shutting it down. That's pretty problematic for the people that are dealing with it, but it does seem totally rational and reasonable when it comes to the focus. The one thing that I could not shake, which I'm going to throw on the screen right here because I found this from an NBC article, I could not shake how much money we've given to this country. Because I went, well, what about the USAID situation? Weren't we going to fix that? It turns out that Israel is the largest cumulative recipient of U.S. aid since 1946. This is the aggregated amount in 2024 dollars measured by billions, and they are almost 2x the next closest, which was Egypt. Behind that, Afghanistan. Of course, that was the Afghan War. Then South Vietnam, where we had significant conflicts for several years there. And then you've got Iraq, another one that we had a big conflict with. Ukraine is on the map, which probably shouldn't be, but we've had conflict there as well. And then you've got South Korea. Apparently, we give a ton to the United Kingdom. That's bizarre. That is truly bizarre. Economic and military aid. What you're seeing on the screen there, it's too small for you to read. Economic is the yellow bar. Military aid is the red. And moreover, a lot of the stuff that we find out is that money for military aid is spent on U.S. contractors. So we're actually paying people within our own nation. We're paying off corporate fat cats in the same way that EBT, I think, is corporate welfare. It's welfare for the people who receive it, but we're basically subsidizing the big box stores that accept it. We're subsidizing the food people, which is why you saw such a big push to make sure that colas and soda drinks were all allowed under EBT, because God forbid you take that money away from the Pepsi Colas or the Coca-Cola corporations and so on. I don't know why we give money to any of these countries. Turkey is on there. India, a huge amount of money is given to India. They're like in the top 10. France, Turkey, Pakistan. Like, why? Why any of these countries? Why Israel so high, but why any of them? For me, it's not specific to them. It's pretty crazy. And then you get the attitude of like, people are mad, rightly so, about the folks that are taking money from this country, that are in this country. I don't see a lot of illegal aliens posting these videos. This may be completely algorithmically generated, by the way. There's a real possibility that this is a manipulation, that this is a piece of psyop that is being done on social media, because it got fed to me, and I know it got fed to a lot of other people, and there's millions of impressions on these videos. They're real clickable. They're really rage-inducing. But when you start looking at the basic statistics of like who is catching aid, it's not all white people or black people or illegal aliens. It's just people in America. But this sort of entitlement attitude that jumps on, where I've been getting it, so I expect that you continue to get it. That's the difference between people who are on the left and the right, generally speaking, because the people who get a benefit from their government on the right are working to not have that. And I've seen your comments, because many of you have made those comments. I was on EBT. I was on food stamps. I was on SNAP. I was a single mom. I was a father that was supporting children if something happened. I had some bad thing happen and I went out of work. I worked my butt off for a couple of years and then I was able to get away from it. I was grateful that I had it, but at the same time, I didn't want to be on it. There's a difference between that and some of this stuff. Here's some kind of interesting clips that I've been kind of gathering. These are not the same from yesterday.
My kids have not ate in 5 days. It is the taxpayer's responsibility to take care of my kids.
Trump done cut them food stamps off. If you're poor, don't have kids, okay? If you're struggling, don't have kids. Don't bring more in. If you already have them, that's another situation. If you don't have them, don't bring any in. And if you have two, don't go having another one. If you have one, don't go having two more.
So they say 2 million is getting cut off this month for the scamps. I'm about to go find out if I'm in that number, in that ratio. It's been day 5 and I have not received no food stamps. My disability checks is on hold. My cash benefits is not coming no more. They're still pending. It is the taxpayer's job to pay for my kids to eat and for my kids to be taken care of. I have over 2,000 followers on TikTok and I can't get not one person to send me 50 cents. If you're watching a video and you...
That's enough of that, right? It's interesting. Here's what the AI stats say on it. This is the only way that I really like using AI, is to go pull statistics, because it can search through a broad variety of websites and pull them out faster than I can. Approximately 19.5% of the United States population received or lived with someone who received a welfare benefit in 2019-2020, based on an HHS survey that included programs like TANF, SNAP, SSI. It also includes things, that one does not include kids who are receiving a school lunch program, which is subsidized and low cost lunches at kids, which is, again, same problem. Overall welfare recipients, 19.5% is what they claim. But there's more to that, because there are statistics out there from places like USA Facts. There's an article that states that 1 in 3 Americans are enrolled in at least one governmental assistance program, and that was mostly bumped up by the fact that we're talking about school lunch programs for kids. Nobody wants to see kids go hungry. What the hell are you doing if you're unable to feed your kids for a long period of time? If that's part of your plan, is that you're going to lean on a government, and not just like any government, but a federal government subsidy for food for your kids? I do not understand that. And the problem is these people filming these TikToks, they have nice phones. They all have government service on that. They've had significant amounts of benefits. And the entitlement attitude, it's like, well, thanks for helping me out. I don't know anybody that wants to help people that don't feel grateful for it, that feel like this is what you owe me because I exist here. At the same time, how do we send billions and billions of dollars outside the United States? How is that a possibility? I saw another study over here, and I can't find the exact article. I think it came from Newsweek, that indicated that immigrants consume, they said, less than what you'd expect. The United States spends $3.1 trillion on welfare and entitlement programs per year. 3.1 trillion. The entitlement programs are going to be some of the other stuff like Social Security and so on. But only 109 billion were spent on non-citizens. Guys, our federal budget is like 7 trillion and change. It's $7.01 trillion. If we spend $109 billion on non-citizens to include illegal aliens, as this news story indicates coming from Newsweek, this is from February of this year, that means we spend 1.555% of our national budget, of our entire government budget on people that are not citizens of this country. Do you know how freaking insane that is? 1.555% on people that are not American citizens. And again, if you look at some of the other numbers that we're finding, as many as 40% across the board in this country of immigrant households who become citizens even are on some form of public assistance. Why the hell are we bringing here if it costs us that? Here's the last one I'll show you. How many people receive government assistance 2022? Around 1 in 3 Americans enrolled in at least one governmental assistance program. You have to ask why we are bringing more people in that are going to just partake on that. There's a great image. It's a meme type image of what true socialism looks like, which is what we live under right now, which is why I would say that the United States is toast. If 49% of American children are receiving some form of welfare or government assistance, we're toast. Absolutely toast. The meme looks like this. There's 2 or 3 people in a wagon and they're driving it, and there's 50 people in the front that are pulling the wagon instead of oxen or horses. And then it moves a little bit further down the line. A couple of people fall out of the line and they end up in the wagon. So now you got about 8 people in the wagon and you got 45 people dragging it. And less people want to drag the wagon to the point where you end up with like a half dozen people pulling the damn wagon and everybody's trying to pull themselves into the wagon so they don't have to ride. At some point, it all falls apart. By the way, they did this in Rome to the point where the Roman government, I was talking to Jeremy Ryan Slate, who we've had on the program before, he said that eventually the welfare programs that were happening in ancient Rome crushed the ability of Rome to do anything because it was the single biggest expenditure that they had. We'll get him back on the program to talk about it. But this number is truly staggering, and most people don't realize exactly how bad it is. Got a couple more videos that'll get you outraged. We'll have something funny, and we'll wrap this sucker up for the day. How about this?
Everybody going around saying that motherfuckers ain't getting food stamp next month. Mind you, bitch, I'm on food stamp. Let me tell you this right now. Donald J. Trump, I don't know what the fuck you got going on in that fucking house of yours, but bitch, you better fix it. Just because your ass going through some shit don't mean you gotta take it out on everybody else, bitch. Fix this shit right now. Let me not get my food stamps. Let me not get my food stamps. I'm going back to stealing. I don't care. If you leave your car unlocked in the middle of the night, lock it, bitch. Because if I don't get no food stamps, best believe me and mine's gonna eat regardless.
I'm trying to make sure I heard this right. Trump said all the groceries is free now? That's what I heard. Well, you take from us, we take from you. Thank you. We're gonna be running out the motherfucking stove.
They're all really profane. Again, all of this stuff feels like info op to me as well, just for whatever it's worth. That doesn't mean that there are not people like this out there. If you've worked in law enforcement, if you've worked in the military, I'm not in the military, if you've worked in first responder type jobs, if you worked in EMS, you've dealt with these people. They have this, there are lots of them. There are tens of thousands of them in urban areas. There are millions of them around the country that are like this. Entitled, profane, ignorant, lazy, crappy people that you don't want to see have this sort of stuff. But I'm not sure that many of them are out recording stuff on TikTok and putting these things out. But I can't rule it out. So I'm sharing it with you. But also, I try to adjust downward. That's why I had statistics as well. I don't know how many people that are receiving some sort of government assistance have that kind of crappy attitude. But I know it's not zero because I've seen them in the store just like you guys have. And I'm just going to say, it's October 22nd. November 1st is when these things are supposed to shut down. Here's the story. You guys can see it right there. How the Trump administration could leave families hungry. Well, the Trump administration has been a letdown in many ways, not always, but many ways. This would be not the worst thing that ever happened. This would be an opportunity to try to correct this problem. It's very interesting how they phrase that. Could leave families hungry, as though that is the job of government. That the Trump administration unilaterally is required to feed families in America. Again, the founder of this country, one of the main architects, a person referred to as the father of the Constitution, the writer of the Virginia Plan, James Madison. Charity is no part of the legislative duty of the government. Make no mistake, welfare, entitlement, call it what you want, it's charity. It is mandated charity that you cannot opt out of. So that's why we talked about tax rates and everything else. There's no way that you can get away from this stuff. And I'll tell you what, I'd like to opt out of paying for people like this. Even if this lady is just doing an act, I despise people like this. I always have. This is a bully that needs to get hit really hard in the face. I don't care if it's a woman. She's going to experience consequences someday. Hopefully she doesn't hurt anyone in the meantime. Claiming that a big fat lady is 250 pounds of human bulldozer is a pretty bold claim. This is on the internet forever, ladies. So this is your legacy. This is probably the only thing people who never met you will ever learn about you.
Donald motherfucking Orange Man J. Trump. I'm gonna tell you just like this. What the fuck you mean? Who ain't getting that goddamn food stamps in goddamn November? Cause I'm getting my goddamn shit. I don't know about the rest of you motherfuckers, but I'm getting my shit. Cause I'm gonna tell you just like this, on Jesus Lamar motherfucking Christ. I will be at motherfucking Walmart with my steel toes on and my motherfucking helmet, and I dare a bitch try to stop me from walking out that motherfucking store with my groceries. Baby, I'm 250 pounds solid. Baby, you want to see a human motherfucking bulldozer, baby? Because that's what the fuck I'm going to turn into. If you think you going to stop me from leaving out that goddamn store with my motherfucking monthly groceries that I get every goddamn month, I ain't bothering no goddamn body, okay? Why the fuck is y'all bothering me and my goddamn food? I'm just so tired of his big back, bald head, cradle cap having ass. Shaped like a motherfucking penguin any motherfucking way, albino motherfucking walrus looking ass. I'm sick of him. Like, it's gonna be an episode of goddamn Snap if y'all turn them goddamn Snap benefits off, I can tell you that. Donald motherfucker.
I don't even know what to say to that. That was brilliant. That level of discourse. I'm convinced. Many of you are also convinced. Let's keep paying these people. Let's just do that. I don't think that lady was acting. I mean, I think that is an act, but I think that she has been inspired to act that way for some reason. And as all of you guys say, they all have nails. They're all living in a place that has electricity. None of these people are living in a freaking tent. You don't get to be 250 pounds and whatever she is, 5'4". You don't get to be that size by not eating things. They're just eating junk. Wouldn't it be nice if we just handed out boxes if we're going to do charity, if we're going to do government mandated charity, which I absolutely despise, can we not actually get like a list of things? It's like, fine, you can choose beef, chicken, or tuna, some kind of fish, whatever. There it is. There's a dairy product. There's some milk. These are the required nutritions. These are some of the grains we're going to give you. You don't get to be on a special diet. You don't get a bunch of cola. You don't get a bunch of junk food. You don't get boxed processed garbage. That's for people that can afford to make bad decisions. You can't. You don't get to. That was the argument against soda, by the way. By the way, did you notice how many people from the quote-unquote MAGA influencer crowd suddenly took money from Coke and were happy to go out there and act like it was a good idea that we can back these government subsidies to companies? Because remember, that woman's dollars, they're coming from us, but they're going to a store and to the manufacturers of products that are junk, that make her 250 or 800 pounds or whatever the hell she weighs. Just saying. All right, we need something funny. We're going to have to get there. I'll remind you one more time. Check us out on Spotify. Check us out on Rumble. Check us out on YouTube. You can check us out over on X. On Locals, we can be found many, many places. If there's a problem with the feed, there's always somewhere else you can check it out. Thanks for joining me. I really do appreciate all of you guys doing that. So will you do subscribe? Will you make sure that you've liked the video? If you're still watching at this point, shoot, what the heck's wrong with you? Like it, push the thumbs up. By the way, the per capita over on YouTube is way higher on the likes. You guys are killing it. I do appreciate you. This is the one-man show. This is the entirety of the operation. You're seeing it all right here. Can we laugh about something? How about a guy saying it's a good joke? Yeah, it's kind of a racial joke, I guess. I don't know what it is. But it is funny. This guy, his style is my favorite. It's super deadpan. It fits right into my ethos. Talking about the dumbest person he knows. This is a little bit off color, but I don't know. Makes sense. What the hell? We're not going to worry about getting canceled today. Here we go.
It's a joke I like a lot. My cousin Randy is maybe the dumbest person I've ever met in my entire life. Dumbest guy I've ever met. The other day he comes up, he goes, Anthony, check out my new tattoo. It's the Japanese symbol for awesome. No, Randy. That's a swastika. I mean, fuck, man. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. That's the German symbol for awesome.
You're going to see a lot more people saying things like that and laughing if you keep making people angry about stuff. But at the end of the day, is a joke not a joke? Can we not have that kind of thing? I want to live in a country that doesn't do politically correct Diwali and shove it down my throat from the White House and act like that's normal when I don't know anybody not a single person that's close to me celebrates that holiday. I knew Indian people growing up, like many of you did. They were just, Christians and Catholics. They went to my schools. You're going to get people have a really bad backlash. This is how you give people like Nick Fuentes to be the future of the so-called young right. Anthony Jeselnik, that's his name. Guy's very funny. All right, that's it for us today. I hope you have a fantastic Wednesday, as weird as it will be. If you had any issues with the stream, check us out over on Spotify. God bless all of you. Look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Hope you go out there and prepare yourself for whatever's coming next. So that might be fitness. That might be getting your mind right, get your spirituality right, get your finances in order. Don't be assuming anyone else is going to come save you, because I'm pretty confident they will not. All right, we'll see you guys again tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.